Hello again, my little devil dogs, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be deep diving the Army Special Rules for the United States of America in Bolt Action 3rd Edition. And let me tell you, they've got some pretty nifty ones. The US Special Rules are very powerful, but they're also very beginner friendly. And I think if you're looking for a nation to start off the game of Bolt Action with, you could do a lot worse than picking the US. And so, without further ado, let's fix bayonets and charge right into this thing. You there! Are you sick of languishing at home with nothing to do, wanking, eating expensive German biscuits and just generally wasting your life? Well, I have got the solution for you. Warlord Games is now the proud sponsor of the Mordian Glory channel, and they have given me an affiliate link. By clicking on that link down in the description below, you'll be able to get yourself some fantastic World War II bolt action miniatures. These finely detailed models are the perfect way of finding yourself a hobby that will finally get you out of the masturbatorum.
I'll make that deal. How about you? You make that deal?
I make that deal.
Damn good deal.
So what are you waiting for? Click on the affiliate link down below, support the channel, and get off the sofa. Now, to give you an idea of what you can expect from this video, we're going to start off by taking a look at the Army Special Rules. We'll get into the pros and cons of each one of them and how they shape your army building. We'll then deep dive by air, land, and sea. This is how you can tweak your army if you want to specialize it towards airborne, marines, or rangers. Finally, we'll wrap things up by taking a look at the Quartermaster's stores. This is somewhat unique to the armies of the US, and it's where you can see the specialist equipment that only they get access to. Some of these are just a little fun, like the Cullen hedgerow cutter, but others are actually genuinely impactful, like gyro stabilizers and shotguns. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. We'll circle back round to that towards the end of the video. For now, let's begin at the beginning and get into the Army Special Rules. First up, we have Fire and Maneuver. The US Army Tactical Doctrine placed great emphasis on firepower and mobility, demonstrated in the armament of the Standard Infantry Squad with the self-loading M1 Garand rifle or carbine. To reflect this combination of doctrine, armament, and plentiful ammunition, for every 3 men within a squad armed with a rifle/carbine, you may add an additional dice when the unit shoots. These shots are assumed to come from any of the men armed as such. For example, 4 men would add 1 additional shot, and 12 men would add 4 shots. I'm just going to say it, this is a straight up damage buff. Being able to just get more shots means you're more likely to get a hit from your squad, increases the likelihood of putting pins on the enemy, and just increases the likelihood of you doing damage and taking enemy models off the board. It's fantastic. And you can kind of cheese it a little bit, because as you can see from this highlighted bit, these shots are assumed to come from any of the men armed as such. So even if you have a few models in a squad that aren't in range, they still count towards the tally of generating your bonus shots. So for example, let's say you've got the aforementioned 12-man squad getting 4 extra shots. If just one guy in that 12-man squad is in range, you can say all of the extra shots are going to be coming from the guy that's in range. And therefore, that one man doesn't fire once, he can fire 5 shots. Is it a little cheesy? 100%. Does it work? Is it totally allowed? Is it accepted? Yes, yes, and yes. Another big advantage of Fire and Maneuver is it can save you points on special equipment. A lot of other nations like to put LMGs in their squads, like machine guns, to give them some bonus firepower. But the US doesn't really need to do that. You can save points, and bear in mind, each one of those light machine guns is 15 points. So you can save that and still get the firepower that other nations are getting just by having your standard rifleman in your squad. And these bonus shots really start kicking in and saving you points early on. It's not like you have to take the full 12-man squads to really feel the effect of it. Let me give you an example. If I take a 6-man British section and I give them an LMG, that will generate 8 shots. I'll have 4 guys with rifles, I'll have 1 loader for the LMG, and then the LMG guy will generate an additional 4 shots for 8 shots. If I'm the Americans and I just take 6 guys, no extra LMGs or anything like that, just 6 bog standard guys, I also get 8 shots. Because I have 6 rifles, and then I get 2 bonus shots for every, because I get +1 for each 3 men in the squad. So it's not like you have to take the big squads to feel fire maneuver. You'll start generating the extra shots and feeling the positive impact and feel the point savings straight away. However, it does have some downsides as well. Firstly, your army rule becomes less and less potent as your squads start taking more and more casualties. If you start off with a 12-man squad, you're going to get 4 extra shots. But the moment you lose 1 guy out of that squad, you're only getting 3. If you take the aforementioned 6-man squad, you can keep up with that British LMG until you lose that first guy, and then you lose a bonus shot. If you compare this to something like the Germans with their buzzsaw special rule, they always get that bonus shot from that LMG until the LMG dies. And typically, that LMG is going to be the last one to go down. So fire maneuver is good, but as your army starts weakening, your army rule starts weakening. It also can sometimes feel like the rule is punishing players if they aren't taking rifles. You might really want to build your guys with some Thompson submachine guns or some grease guns, but if you do that, then you won't be benefiting from fire and maneuver. And so by paying points for SMGs and LMGs, it's like you're actually being punished for doing so in a weird sort of way. It's not quite right, and there's a whole host of advantages to taking things like LMGs. You get longer range, for example. You also get advantages taking SMGs, like you can move and shoot, you get assault, all that kind of stuff. But psychologically, if you're a new player, sometimes you can feel like you should only be building riflemen. And that's not the case at all. You should still be buying this extra equipment, but it should be done in a more thoughtful way. Like there's nothing wrong with taking a 10-man brick of rifles, but supporting that, you might want something like a squad of US Marines with some SMGs and shotguns. So to sum all of this up, fire maneuver is great. You can save points on squads and you can just get more firepower. But I think the best way of leveraging it in your army is to concentrate it. Have a few squads which are just dedicated rifle blobs, but then don't be afraid to have some squads which are just chock full of specialist equipment. Either your squads want to be really leaning into it, or they kind of want to be avoiding it. But let's move on to our next rule, air superiority. In the last years of the war, the USAAF could boast undisputed ownership of the skies. The Luftwaffe was no longer able to oppose them, with disastrous consequences for German troops and the columns of armoured vehicles that were constantly hammered by low-flying attacks from the USAAF aircraft. The Forward Air Observer Unit could call an airstrike twice instead of once per game. Resolve the first airstrike as normal, then after the first airstrike has been resolved, the FAO may call a second. So this is a classic Army special rule that the US has had since, I think, first edition of Bolt Action. However, it has been tweaked and modified with 3rd edition, and I think it is a lot better now. In the past, it just used to let you take an air observer for free. So if you were playing a 1,000-point game versus 1,000 points, you actually had 1,100 points, which wasn't really very fair. Now, you just still have to pay for your air observer, but they can call in 2 airstrikes. Now, if you're reading this the first time, you might be thinking, that sounds a bit crap. Someone could just like take out my air observer and then I don't get to benefit from my army special rule. There's an element of that, but they have massively improved air observers from previous editions to now. In the past, like a rookie pilot could come in and strafe your own guys. One of my mates, Sam, who's actually done a few battle reports with me with Bot Action, he would tell you that he used to put an air observer in his America list if he wanted to meme it. Because many times in games, both casual and at our local tournament scene, he would be on the cusp of victory and then a rookie pilot would come in and blast him. That risk basically does not exist anymore. It's just not a problem. So yeah, you've got to pay for your forward air observer. Yeah, there's a chance your opponent could take him out, but there's no range on his ability. He just has to be able to see you. Could be in the back corner. He just has to be able to see you. And airstrikes are so much more improved now that this is actually a potentially game-changing maneuver, but now it's positive, not negative. I have been on the receiving end of an American air observer who successfully called in 2 airstrikes back to back. And it completely shut down my flank. A flank which I had been dominating with Fallschirmjäger and Panzer IIIs basically got pinned up, smashed up, and my advance completely stalled. And what I thought would have been an easy win ended up being that I barely made any headway on that flank. So it is a good ability. Forward air observers are good, and air superiority makes me even better. And just a quick side note here, I think that's why Warlord Games has made it so you have to wait for the first airstrike to be resolved before you can call the second one in. Because if you got hit by double airstrike basically at the same time, it would be really, really tough. So I like air superiority because it feels balanced. It feels powerful from the US side, but it feels that there's been a few checks and balances put in there to stop it from being overly dominating. And it also feels like, as someone who plays against air superiority, I have a chance to maybe interact with it and try and counterplay it. But now we get to the last of the main army special rules, and this one is modern communications. An extensive radio network and numerous land-based communication systems supported the chain of command. This gave the US Army a tremendous advantage over their less well-equipped opponents, many of whom relied on word-of-mouth runners or, in the case of armored formations, signal flags. When units take an order test to move from reserve onto the table, do not apply the usual -1 penalty. I like to describe this rule as the noisy cricket. If you've ever seen the first Men in Black film, you'll kind of get what I'm talking about. It's small, it's innocuous, but it has the potential to pack a really big punch. This rule isn't one that's necessarily going to come up every single game. Sometimes you won't use reserves. Sometimes you'll do first wave and just bring everything on that way. But those times when reserves are available and you can bring in some units late in the game, this sometimes can save your ass. This has happened to me, and I have had this happen to my opponents, and whenever it has happened, it's potentially won or lost me the game. Okay, my enemy is pressuring this flank, but it's okay. I've kept this really important unit in reserve in like a truck or a half track. If I can just pass this order test, I'll be fine. And I should easily pass it, right? I've got regulars or I've got veterans in reserve. No problem. And I rolled a 9 on my regulars. That means they come in, right? No, because of the -1 penalty. I rolled a 10 on my veterans. That means they come in, right? No, because of the -1 penalty. The number of times when either myself or my opponent has failed to bring reserves in at a very critical juncture, well, I'll tell you, I've lost count of the number of times. So this is not an overly flashy rule. This doesn't give you some like direct damage buff like the first two do. But this is an insurance policy. And as often with insurance, you kind of wish you didn't need it, or you probably wish you had something else. But when it comes into play, it can be a lifesaver. I'm not saying that modern communications is the best of all of these special rules. It's not. I think that the first two definitely do a lot more. But what I'm saying is, everyone who has ever poo-pooed modern communications before playing with it has, at some point, come to learn to respect the special rule. So it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But that covers the main army special rules. Now let's get into the army specialization. Similar to Defend the Fatherland for the Germans, the Americans have got by air, land, and sea. This is how you can specialize your force and theme it around either the airborne, the Marines, or the Rangers. Certain infantry and artillery units in this book may have additional options to represent the different distinct forces of the airborne, Rangers, and Marines. A unit entry may contain options to take that unit as one of those forces. If a unit is eligible to be taken as that force, its unit entry will say so. It may also enable that unit to take further options not available to the unit ordinarily. Vehicles might also belong to any of these distinct forces, but this makes no difference in rules terms and is normally just a matter of using the right painting/marking scheme. These unit entries have the option for by air, land, and sea, and then list some or all of the three options. Once an option is selected, the following rules and costs each apply. If you want an example of how you can tell if a unit can take by air, land, or sea, if we look at the officers, for example, you can see under the options that it has by air, land, or sea in the options there. And you can see that it unlocks additional options depending on which one of these you take. So if you take an officer as airborne, not only will he get the benefits of being airborne, which we'll look at in a moment, but he also can take up to 2 additional men, meaning that you can have a platoon squad that consists of 1 officer and 7 additional men, making a full 8-man squad. That's crazy. If you take it as Marines, you can get an additional 1, have a 7-man squad. Most other armies, at best, can get like 2 additional men. The fact that the Americans can get up to 5 is already amazing. The fact they can get potentially 8-man squads is phenomenal. But it's not just officers. You can also see by air, land, and sea constantly throughout the army book, especially around things like special weapon teams such as the medium machine gun team. You can see we've got by air, land, and sea there, so you can have a regular US Army MMG team, or you can make this like a Marine MMG team, or an airborne MMG team, or a Ranger MMG team. And again, you can do it with things like heavy machine guns, and you can even do it with things like the bazooka anti-tank teams, and many others. So many examples that we could do a whole video just basically scrolling through and going, yep, and that one, and that one, and that one. I will say, Warlord Games has been very liberal with and given it to a wide variety of units the by air, land, and sea, which is great. It means that you can take your US Marines and not feel like you're being punished for taking them. Like, oh, I can't take that because I don't have by air, land, and sea. No. Pretty much, if you want to run a proper US Marine force, a proper airborne force that looks the part, feels the part, acts the part, pretty much your entire army is also going to have access to by air, land, and sea, and the whole thing is going to feel right. So, the big question is, what exactly does going airborne do? What exactly does going Marines do? What exactly does going Rangers do? Well, it's not quite as simple as it may first seem by looking on screen. You see, recently, Warlord Games actually released an FAQ for the armies of the United States. And one of the big changes in there was to by air, land, and sea. This is the FAQ in question, and you can see down here that they have added on page 25 2 changes. The first one is by air, land, and sea, change the first line of the airborne section as follows. Units must be taken as regular or veteran. And then on page 25, by air, land, and sea, change the first line of the Marine section as follows. If taken as veteran, units may be upgraded to stubborn for +1 point per man. So now that we know what these changes are, let's dive into by air, land, and sea with the full picture. For your airborne, units must be taken as regular or veteran, so no inexperienced airborne units. I suppose it just represents the fact that they were kind of an elite within the army. And then if you do choose to go for an airborne themed force, your units must be upgraded to stubborn for 1 point per man. You don't have a choice. Now, being forced to upgrade things to stubborn might stick in the craw of some people, but truth be told, stubborn is one of the best rules in the game. I absolutely love it. Now, I recently went to a tournament with an all-stubborn army, and whilst it wasn't US airborne, it was German Fallschirmjäger, so basically German airborne. And I took everyone as veteran, I took everyone as stubborn, and my army was nearly unkillable, and it was nearly unbreakable. Stubborn is just so good. If you don't know what it does, it means that when you are taking a leadership test, so not an order test, but you're taking a leadership test, you ignore modifiers. So if you lose half your squad and you've got to take a leadership test, you take it on your base leadership. But your leadership can still be boosted by officers. So a really good example of this is if you've got a unit of veterans and there's an officer nearby who are stubborn, then they're on leadership 11, because in version 3 leadership can go up to 11, and you'll only break on a double 6. Now, this is really powerful on units like Veteran, but to be fair, Veterans do already have Leadership 10. So going up to Leadership 11 is nice, but you're already pretty stubborn. The big thing here is the fact that via this FAQ, Warlord have added in regulars. And regulars with stubborn are actually relatively uncommon. Normally, your stubborn units are reserved for veterans. Being able to have regular stubborn is massive because regulars have got a leadership of 9. If you add that officer's leadership of +2, that +2 bonus from platoon commander, they're up to leadership 11. So you get units that are just as unbreakable as veterans are, but you now get to save 3 points per man. And truthfully, I think this is very powerful. And I do think that in the competitive scene, we're going to see some people trying out these airborne armies that are regular veterans see. However, even though you get to save a lot of points, it is important to note that one of the greatest benefits of veteran is the fact that you are only wounded on a 5+. And so it's all well and good looking at this just through the lens of leadership, and that is very powerful, but it's important to note that your regulars will just be dying a lot more. And you might not think there's a big difference between a 4 up and a 5 up to wound someone, but there is. It affects you at all sorts of breakpoints. Common indirect fire sources tend to be pen +2. That means that they still wound your veterans on 3s rather than 2s like they do against regulars. And it just means in general your veterans tend to be much more survivable against small arms fire. So I think that we're going to see a lot of people trying regular airborne. But as someone who has run veteran spam and has run regular spam, I think that the durability of veterans will still be a really, really key factor. And a lot of people may still end up taking the airborne units as veteran, even though they can choose to take them as regular. But hey, maybe the best way of looking at this isn't through the lens of going all reg or all vet. Maybe the best way of looking at this is a mixture. Those units that you know are going to be in the thick of the fighting, the assault squads, make them veteran because they're going to need the extra durability. But if you're going to have squads that are just equipped with rifles, that are going to be sitting back and we're just doing a bit of long-range shooting, just taking advantage of the fire and maneuver order, or you've got someone with LMGs or BARs, well, the range, the distance, the fact they're not going to be quite in the thick of the fighting, that they're probably not going to be putting as much pressure on your opponent, that sort of indirectly adds to that squad's durability. As a result, they don't really need to be veteran. They can get away with being regular. So if you have assault squads as veteran and fire support squads as regular, you get to save some points and everyone still gets to be stubborn and more than likely running around on leadership 11. So that covers the airborne. But what about the Devil Dogs, the US Marines? Well, the Marines also get access to stubborn. But the big difference between the Marines is, one, you don't have to take anything as stubborn. As you can see via the FAQ, it says units now may be upgraded to stubborn, not must be upgraded to stubborn. So you can just choose not to have that if you don't want to. And also, there's no qualifier around units having to be regular or veteran. So you can have a bunch of veteran and regular Marine squads running around, but when you think about how by air, land and sea works, it's being applied to units that don't normally have a Marine rule or have an airborne rule. And those units can be taken as inexperienced. So if you want some inexperienced light mortars, you can do that and take them as Marines if you want to, and you'll still have your themed army. So it's kind of interesting with the Marines. Essentially, you have the choice of any level of experience in your army, but it's only the veterans which have the choice of being upgraded to being stubborn. And whilst it might be very tempting to go, well, I'm going to take all of my Marines as dead-hard veterans, everyone's going to be stubborn. Of course, you can do that. Don't get me wrong. But I think the advantage of the Marine rule is the fact that you have more flexibility over where you have to pay that 1 point per man stubborn cost. With Airborne, you don't have a choice. Whether it's regular or veteran, everyone's got to be a certain veterancy, and also everyone has got to be stubborn. With Marines, you can be very precise, you can be very involved in the decision-making process of where you want that stubborn to be in your army. You can be like, okay, I want some experience like mortars. Okay, they're not going to be stubborn. Great, but they're doing what light mortars do. Fantastic. All right, I also want to have this assault squad loaded up with shotguns and SMGs. All right, well, they're going to be in the thick of it, so I'll make them veteran and they will get stubborn. Oh, I've got like a regular squad that's just going to be sat back, firing away with some BARs and LMGs. I probably don't even really need stubborn on this unit. I mean, it would be nice, but I don't need it. So I'm not going to pay for it. And so the Marines can take a real spectrum of veterancy and then apply the stubborn just to the top end for where they think they're really going to need it. Now, the disadvantage, of course, of the Marine rules, especially if we're comparing them to Airborne, and it's very natural to compare and contrast these two because they're both sort of built around this idea of stubborn, is that whilst you don't have to take stubborn on your regulars like the Airborne do, you don't have the choice to take stubborn on your regulars, even if you wanted to. So Airborne regular units sitting back and plinking away, they have to be stubborn, but that does give them a certain extra layer of durability. And I bet there's going to be a few games that Marine players end up playing where they're like, oh man, I really wish this squad that's sort of holding my key position objective had stubborn, but they're only regular, so I couldn't give it to them. So to sum up this Airborne versus Marines thing, in a nutshell, Airborne armies are going to be small, they're going to be elite, and even your regular units are going to be more expensive because you have to pay for stubborn. You don't have a choice, you've got to take it. With Marines, you have much greater flexibility on what level of veterancy you can apply to the different units in your army, but you also have much greater limitation on what veterancy can get access to stubborn. Which one you choose is going to come down to, I think, two factors. Firstly, which one do you prefer? From just a fluff, narrative, historical point of view. Are you an Airborne guy or are you a Marine guy? I mean, I would say for most bot action players, that's the deciding factor. Damn the rules. From a rules perspective, though, I think it's going to come down to some players are going to want that comfort, knowing that every unit in their army is pretty hard, like the Airborne, and know that they are paying a premium for that, so they're probably going to have a smaller force. And there's going to be those players which really like to tweak the nuance of their list, and I want this to be inexperienced, and I want this to be veteran, this to be regular. And those that like to squeeze every point, and like to squeeze every bit of efficiency out of a list, will probably end up thinking about going Marines. But if you really don't want to have stubborn, you can go for Rangers instead. Now, again, Rangers must be taken as veterans. So basically, if you want to go by air, land, and sea, you're taking a veteran force, which makes sense. These are elite formations of the United States, and all of these were renowned for being made up of some of the best troops. So it makes sense that you can't have like inexperienced Rangers and stuff running around. Now, units must be given the following rule for 1 point per man. Units of Rangers are allowed to make a run move after both sides have finished setup, but before the first turn of the game. During this move, the unit cannot assault enemy units and cannot be targeted by enemies in ambush. Rangers lead the way. Oh my god, that is amazing. That is so good. It's a run move. That's a free 12-inch move. That can get you up the board near objectives in key positions. That can allow you to storm forward on demolition missions. It's a pressure army. It's like a proper bolt action pressure army. If you're someone that likes lots of like SMGs and stuff, this is great because you can like, okay, well, I'll get my SMGs into range much quicker. If you like rifles, it's really nice as well. Because one of the problems with rifles, of course, is that they can suffer from a move and shoot penalty. But if you just do your free move before the game, then you might be in range and not have to move after that. Therefore, you're just plinking away straight up from the beginning of the game. with all your extra shots. It's really nice. At the end of the day, movement wins games. This is true in almost any tabletop war game, whether it's Warhammer 40k, Bolt Action, Old World, or anything else. Movement wins games. The fact that Rangers gives you a massive free move at the beginning of the game, which you can't be ambushed on, is phenomenal. And for those of you who are curious if Rangers get completely buggered by Italy and armies which have similar rules to Italy, the answer is no. Rangers beat Italians. Because the Italian rule says, during the first turn of the game, the enemy cannot order their units to run as they cautiously probe the terrain in front of the Italian line for minefields and make their way across the barbed wire. That says during the first turn. This says before the first turn. Therefore, Rangers lead the way, get their 12-inch move. They can't run in turn 1, but they can run before turn 1. Cool. Also, they can't be targeted by enemies in ambush, which also diddles the Italians again. And there are armies like Italy which have very similar rules to this. Any Italian unit that is set up on the table before turn 1 may start the game already in ambush. If you decide to do so, set one of your dice in place next to them as you had ordered them to ambush before during the first dice on turn 1. So again, that doesn't apply because it specifically says here they cannot be targeted by ambush. So Rangers are actually, I mean, this rule is great all the time, but against Italians, it's like double doozy kryptonite. And you might say, well, it's only one nation, why would I worry about it? Well, firstly, there are a lot of armies that actually get similar rules to this. And secondly, Italy is one of the surprisingly popular armies of Bolt Action. And they're getting their first stand-alone armies of book, not sharing anymore, like they did in 2nd edition, later in 3rd edition. I think it's in 2026. Honestly, it's not that far away. So it's good. Rangers either way is good, and it's going to continue to be good, and Italy is popular, so it can be really good more often than you expect. But finally, we get to the Quartermaster's stores. This is the following special equipment issued for various specialist roles and may only be taken by unit if it has the option in its unit entry. So a bit like with air, land and sea, you can only take this special equipment if it is as a weapon option or a rule option on that unit's entry. Now, some of these are really good, some of them are a bit of fun, and some of them are a bit of a meme, but all of them are cool. The first one is gyro stabilizers. American tank guns benefited from the development of gyro stabilizers that enabled the gunner to track his target even while on the move. In the hands of experienced crews, this proved to be a great advantage, but less experienced gunners found its use too difficult and often switched it off. When a vehicle with the special rule is taken as veteran, its anti-tank gun does not suffer the -1 to hit penalty for moving and shooting. This does not apply to vehicles with inexperienced or regular crew, nor does it apply to any coaxial machine gun. Basically, if you take a veteran tank, you can ignore pretty much the only to hit penalty in the game. Because you don't have to hit penalties for long range anymore, or to hit penalties for cover anymore. That's all last edition. So it's a good rule. The only downside of this rule is you have to take it as veteran. And honestly, most people don't take their vehicles as veteran. Most people take them as regular. But the reason most people don't take them as veteran is because they don't feel like the increased cost is worth it, just for like an extra bit of leadership and maybe ignoring a pin or something like that. With gyro stabilizers, I think it does actually make it worth considering, especially when some of the American vehicles who can get access to this are surprisingly affordable. Now, you've got the Sherman. That's a classic. About 250 points veteran, and it gets gyro stabilizers on that improved HE main gun, which is fantastic. But if you want a cheaper option, you do have things like the M3 Stuart, which many different variants of it can be taken as veteran with gyro stabilizers. Now, sure, it's only a light anti-tank gun, but still, it's veteran, it's gyro stabilized. Light AT can still do some work. But if you want something that feels like, okay, it's actually going to do something, it's not just, oh, it's a cheap veteran tank that happens to have access to gyro stabilizer, then I would say look at the Chaffee. Chaffee comes at 204 points. So it's bang in the middle between taking a Stuart and taking a Sherman as veteran. And it comes with a medium anti-tank gun with gyro stabilizer. So you get medium AT, which is much better than light AT. You get gyro stabilizer, and you get a price which isn't going to break the bank. I quite like that. I think the Chaffee, out of all of the vehicles, and you still have improved HE, and you have fast as well. If you really want to, you could take bloody Recce on the thing as well. Point is, I think if you're going to take gyro stabilizer, the best tank to take it on is probably the Chaffee. Next, we have shotguns. American forces made good use of shotguns, particularly in the Pacific Theater, with a variety of models issued. The shotgun has an 18-inch range, one shot, no pen, it's a small arm, and it has assault. Now, I have briefly glanced through the units for the Americans, and it seems to be like the only units that can really take these are the Marines, and you typically can take 3 of them in a squad. 3 shotguns in a squad, that is. They're very interesting because they're 2 points per model. Now, a normal SMG is 4 points, and you do get 2 shots from it, but it's only got a 12-inch range. The shotgun, being cheaper and having a longer range, and still giving you assault, which means you can move and shoot it without penalty, and it gives you tough fighter in close combat, is very nice. It's genuinely very nice. The way I would probably use this is if I was building a Marine assault squad, I would probably go for some SMGs anyway, because you want to have that extra firepower. But I would seriously consider, if you went for a big Marine assault squad, I'd be like, okay, 1 or 2 guys with rifles to catch bullets on the way in, 3 guys with shotguns, 3 guys with SMGs, lots of tough fighter. But I could definitely see if you wanted a cheap assault squad, you could be like, okay, well, we'll give the NCO a submachine gun because we want him to be able to have tough fighter. We'll give 3 other guys shotguns. That'll come in at 10 points. That's 4 guys with assault weapons. And then just have like 3 extra blokes with just rifles. Gets me an extra shot from my army rule, fire maneuver. And also gives me a few guys who can be the first ones to die on the way across the board. And that wouldn't be very expensive either. It would be cheaper than taking a big squad. Save points on SMGs. I like it. 2 points for this is very, very good. The only problem is I didn't see a unit that let you take all shotguns. If I could, I'd have like a 7-man squad and I'd have 6 of them with shotguns and 1 bloke with a rifle just to die first. But I don't know if that exists. Let me know if there is a way of doing that down in the comment section below. Next up, we have demolition charges. These can pretty much only be taken by engineer squads. A unit may place a demolition charge once per game by taking a fire order. Place a marker 25mm in diameter in base contact with a single man in the firing unit. Once placed, if the placed unit is assaulted by an enemy or destroyed in any way, the marker is removed. To trigger the charge, the unit must make a run order in a subsequent turn and move at least 3 inches away. This cannot be used to assault an enemy unit. Yeah, you're running away, yeah. After the run move is complete, the demolition charge immediately explodes with the 3-inch template centered around the marker. That's cool. That's a big template. Okay. If the marker is placed in contact with the building when it explodes, treat this as a direct hit by a 3-inch HE weapon against the building and any unit inside instead of using the template. That's kind of interesting because if you've got a building with multiple floors, you might have multiple units embarked within it. You could hit all the units inside. If the marker is placed in contact with the vehicle and it explodes before the vehicle moves away, treat this as a direct hit by a 3-inch HE weapon against the vehicle instead of using the template. Demolition charge, 1 shot. Pen, HE 3 inches, 1 shot. Okay, so it's a bit of a meme. It's probably one of those upgrades that you put on an engineer squad and every mission you sort of say, after every battle you go, probably shouldn't bother with that demolition charge. And then one mission, you get it off. You like blow up a building, you wipe out the squads inside, or you blow up an enemy tank, you have a great time, and you're like, yes, I love it. And this now saves my army every single time. It's a bit of a meme weapon. Most of the time, you probably won't get that payoff, but when you do get the payoff, it will be so very sweet. I think the best way of trying to do this is how I would set it was with a unit of engineers, and I'd try and have them like last dice, I mean, of a turn. So you go, right, engineers, it's like a 3-turn setup though. You've got to get to where you want to go, then fire, then run. It is very tricky to set up. You probably want to run as the last dice on the first turn you're trying to set it up. Then you probably want to use fire as the last dice on the second turn, and then hopefully you draw first dice on the third turn and you run away and set the demolition charge off. I think it's probably too tricky to ever realistically do, but I think, like I said, if you manage it, the payoff would be... It would be a story that you would tell forever. That cool time when you demoed that building and it was amazing. Or maybe another way of looking at it is you don't use this in a normal game. It's more of something for like a narrative game. If you're having to like destroy some emplacements, or if there's a kind of cool way you could do it is you could have like an anti-tank gun behind a building, and then you could blow the building, try and destroy the building, and then fire the anti-tank gun afterwards. Again, I think it's just too much setup to be more than a meme, but I think in some fun games it'll be really cool. Lastly, we have the Cullen Hedgerow Cutter. Sergeant Curtis Grubb Cullen III served with the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron during World War II. Inspired by the sight of steel chevaux de frise, huge iron crosses placed on the Normandy beaches to hamper tanks and landing craft, he had them fixed like giant knives onto the front of Sherman tanks. Such a simple idea was quickly copied, enabling tanks to clear large hedges and make a path through otherwise impenetrable hedgerows. Any tank that has the option of adding a Cullen Hedgerow Cutter may do so for 5 points per model. A tank so equipped may move at advanced rate through any bocage or hedgerow or can power obstacle that is otherwise rated impassable to vehicles. As it does so, it automatically creates a gap passable to any tracked vehicles moving at advanced rate. That's cool. I mean, it's so niche. It's obviously there for themed games. It's not a real upgrade. It's not an upgrade you're going to take automatically every single time. It is a, hey, do you want to do a Normandy game? Do you want to do a Fighting Through the Hedgerows of France game? Sure. Don't forget your Cullen Hedgerow Cutters. I won't. That's what it's for. It's for narrative/historical games. And that, my friends, is the deep dive of all of the Army Special Rules for the United States in Bolt Action 3rd edition. And overall, I think they've got a pretty decent set. You've got damage buffs, movement buffs, morale buffs. You can take some cool assault weapons. You can have your tanks fire on the move without any issues. And a lot of it feels really pick and choose. Like, ooh, I'll have a bit of fire and maneuver on this squad. Ooh, I'll have a little bit of stubborn on that squad. Ooh, I'll go rangers for this. Ooh, my air superiority will kick in this time. It just feels like none of the main rules are situational at all. It's always going to be good to have an extra airstrike. It's always going to be good to have extra shots. It's always going to be good to be able to pick and customize your force like that. And the fact that, you know, Marines and Airborne, whilst pretty similar, there's nothing. It's so good having access to that much stubborn. And if you want to have maneuverability, you can do with Rangers. There's nothing there which makes me go, ooh, that's a bad rule. It's all just solid. Straight up solid. No major downsides. And you even get some cool funky equipment there as well, which I kind of like. Are there factions which fundamentally are going to have individually better rules than the US? Of course. 100%. But are there factions out there who have rules which are also fundamentally worse than what the US has got? Yeah. The United States special rules and the whole way the army kind of plays just feels very steady Eddie. And this kind of links into what I was saying before with them being a bit of a beginner-friendly faction. It's super easy for a new player coming into this game to pick up what the US is putting down. If you take rifles, get some extra shots. Okay, I can remember that. That's not too bad. If you take this forward air observer, he can do his thing twice. Yep, that's not too complicated. Got that one. If you want to, you can go for Marines and Airborne, and they kind of do similar things. It just makes you stubborn. Yeah, okay, nice. And a lot of their abilities are unlocked by the same thing, being veteran. Veteran for gyro stabilizers. Veteran for all of air, land, and sea. And so, if you're a new player coming into this, you could be like, okay, well, if I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but as long as I'm taking veterans and rifles, I'm probably heading in the right direction. Yeah, you are. You're 90% of the way there. You don't really need to worry at that point. Just start playing the game, learning the rules and having a fun time and getting just better by just playing with experience. That's it. They're very beginner friendly because like if it's veteran, I get bonuses. If not, it just does what it says on the sheet. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And also with this sort of push towards them being quite veteran to get access to a lot of this bonus stuff, it means that as a new player, you can kind of approach this in two ways. Firstly, you can be like, okay, I'll avoid veterans for now. I'll just take things as regular because I don't want to overcomplicate things. I can just learn things one thing at a time. Once I've got the basic rules down, I'll then start playing around the veteran things. Yeah, great. Super easy to do that. And also it's good because veteran armies tend to be smaller, which means they tend to be cheaper, as in real life money, real life pounds and dollars or whatever else tend to be cheaper. You know that you can buy an American army, buy that US Marine starter set, buy that US Airborne starter set, buy that US Army starter set and start painting them up as Rangers. You know you do that and you're probably going to have more than 1250 points, more than enough. And it, as I've seen this many times with US players, they'll literally buy one box, one starter army, couple of tanks, and that's it. Leave it. And they don't need to mess around with it. And they'll play their guys Marines one time, Airborne another time, and Rangers another time. And they'll just switch between them. And it's cheap for them to do that, and it's easy for them to flip between the forces. So I think they are genuinely beginner-friendly, both from an in-game rules perspective, from a learning perspective, and from a real-life getting your hands on them perspective, and getting your bang for your buck. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Are you a fan of the US? What do you think of their special rules? Are there things that you've seen here which have inspired you and make you want to collect US? Is there something here that maybe has put you off US? And are there any other factions out there that you want me to have a look at and do this deep dive? Lastly, are there any US units you want me to take a look at and do some unit reviews on? Any suggestions that get put down in the comment section, I'll take a look and I'll probably make a video out of them. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to never miss an episode. All of that engagement is very, very important, especially when we're doing a game like Bolt Action because it's a bit different. So anything that can support the YouTube algorithm, get this video out there, is greatly appreciated. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, R.J., Scorpion, Bonbonvert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.